Chapter 101. Later, Wuming hugged the sleeping Shitsuki Mayu and followed Amiya Kuritsugu and Shiro Amiya to Amiya Kuritsugu's residence in the city's winter wood. Late at night, a car stopped in front of a house. Wuming hugged the sleeping Mayu and got out of the car. After Amiya Kuritsugu and Shiro Amiya got out of the car, Amiya Kuritsugu carried the few remaining books found in the Shitsuki family and told Shiro Amiya, "Shiro, go and prepare a room for Mr. Wuming and Shitsuki Mayu." Shitsuki Mayu was the name written on the record found by Amiya Kuritsugu in the collapsed cabin. There was no doubt that it was the name of the little girl in Wuming's arms. "I don't need it." Wuming stopped Shiro Amiya, who was about to prepare a room, and continued, "Help me prepare a room for my little master." "I don't need it." Shiro Amiya looked at Amiya Kuritsugu and then nodded. "I understand." "Then I will go in first, Mr. Amiya." After that, regardless of Amiya Kuritsugu's opinion, he walked in with Mayu in his arms. Amiya Kuritsugu didn't care about Wuming's behavior. In his opinion, servants were tools. He didn't need to be good to them. He just needed not to provoke them. Because the Amiya family had a lot of bedrooms, and the house was relatively empty, Shiro Amiya could move in after a simple cleaning. Wuming followed Shiro Amiya to a room. There was nothing on the clean tatami, except for the quilt. "Because I didn't know that someone was going to move in. There is no other furniture except for the quilt." Wuming looked at Shiro Amiya in front of him, who looked very restrained, and said with a smile, "Thank you, and it's okay. You can go do your work." Wuming went into the room and closed the door. Wei Gongshi stared blankly at the closed door. Servants aren't as bad as Cut made them out to be. Wei Gongshiro mumbled to himself as he left. Wuming waved his hand, and the room was suddenly filled with a sacred feeling. Wuming put Mayu on the bed and covered Mayu with a quilt. After casting a warm lune rune for Mayu, Wuming's spirit form disappeared. On the roof, Wuming appeared and sat on the beam. He looked at Amiya Kuritsugu, who was moving books, and Shiro Amiya, who was helping Amiya Kuritsugu. Wuming turned his gaze and looked at the bright moonlight in the sky. He began to organize the information he got. First, the contract between Wuming and Mayu was not initiated by Mayu. But after the enchantment was destroyed, the people's desire to be saved was conveyed to Mayu. It happened that Wuming, a servant, was nearby, so Mayu passively signed a contract with Wuming. In fact, even if there was no contract, Wuming would have erased the Black Storm mud. Not only because Wuming promised Jemwang Zelik that he would do his best to save the world, but also because of Wuming's own will. As a former human, Wuming didn't want to see a disaster happen. If possible, Wuming would still help humans. And Wuming didn't play any word games. Whether it was to protect the world, or save the world, Wuming would do it. Second, the Fourth Holy Grail War in this world ended not long ago. According to Amiya Kuritsugu, the Fourth Holy Grail War had ended almost 5 years ago. Amiya Kuritsugu was not a participant in the Fourth Holy Grail War, but Amiya Kuritsugu was a good friend of one of the masters. According to Amiya Kuritsugu, 2 of the 3 masters who held the Holy Grail War had died, including his good friend. At the end of the Fourth Holy Grail War, the Winterwood, which was located at the place where the Holy Grail War was held, suffered a large-scale destruction. Shiro Amiya was Amiya Kuritsugu's adopted son in that war. Moreover, this world had been prophesied that humans would eventually be destroyed. Destruction. Will it be because of this world? Is my little master the human who has many connections with the heroic spirits? Wuming thought. After thinking for a moment, Wuming shook his head, and his spirit form disappeared. Just like that, Wuming's first night in this world passed. The next morning, before dawn, the people of Winterwood City were still asleep. Wuming appeared in the courtyard in his spirit form and stretched. Sure enough, the body that is used to sleep is not adapted to the body in spirit form. That's right, Wuming was not dead after all. He was a different kind of heroic spirit. In addition, Wuming had lived a normal human life in France. In other words, every night, Wuming would go to bed and sleep. Although Wuming could not sleep as a servant, it was a bit difficult for a servant who was used to sleeping. Therefore, Wuming directly removed his spirit form. Let's go and prepare Master's toiletries first. She probably hasn't woken up yet. With that, Wuming walked out of the Amiya mansion. A moment later, Wuming came back with a series of toiletries for young girls. Wuming walked to the door of the room that Shiro Amiya prepared for Mayu and stopped. It seems that children of this age can't take care of themselves. As he said that, Wuming walked in another direction. A moment later, Wuming came back with a basin of hot water and a wet towel. Knock knock. Wuming knocked on the door, then pushed the door open and walked in. In this room full of sacred atmosphere, Mayu sat on the bed, the lower half of her body covered with a quilt. Because Mayu fell asleep after meeting Wuming, Mayu's clothes were still the same as before. It was a gorgeous dress similar to a witch's costume, and Mayu had a flower-shaped hair ornament on her head. Looking at that expressionless face and cold red eyes, Wuming felt a tinge of heartache. Mayu, why are you awake so early? With that, Wuming walked slowly to Mayu's side, squatted down, put the things in his hands aside, and looked at Mayu. Children shouldn't wake up so early, you need to sleep well. Wuming patted Mayu's head. Mayu's face showed a hint of confusion, as if she was wondering why he patted her head. I couldn't sleep, so I woke up, Mayu said after a while. Wuming smiled sweetly at Mayu. Is that so? Then let's wash up. Then, with Wuming's help, Mayu successfully finished washing up. Then Wuming brought Mayu to the edge outside. Mayu, sit here for a while, I'll prepare food for you. Mayu looked at the edge made of wooden planks, then looked at Wuming, and nodded. Mayu hugged a cloth ball and sat down steadily. Wuming then started to go to the Amiya family's kitchen. But at this moment, Wuming stopped and looked back at Mayu. Wuming found that Mayu was just sitting there in a daze. Wuming frowned, and then a loon rune appeared in the air, and a few cute little fairies appeared beside Wuming. This was a loon magic to summon a familiar. Then, the little fairies flew to Mayu's side. Mayu looked at the little fairies in surprise, then looked at Wuming. In response, Wuming only smiled. Then he left the room and went to the kitchen. Seeing Wuming's back disappear around the corner, Mayu turned her gaze and looked curiously at the cute little fairies, and the corner of her mouth curved up slightly. Chapter 102. Well then, let me see what ingredients the Amiya family has. After that, Wuming didn't find anything. After all, it was a place where he didn't come often, so it was easy for the ingredients to go bad. After that, Wuming didn't say anything and directly used the space door and walked in. After a while, Wuming came out with a series of ingredients. As for how to pay, Wuming said that he had some gold coins in his dragoness that weren't very useful. Just as Wuming was preparing food in the kitchen, Shiro Amiya walked in with a yawn. Hey, Mr. Wuming. Shiro seemed to be at a loss at the moment. He really didn't expect that the legendary heroic spirit would actually cook in person. Are you scared by me, Shiro Amiya? Wuming didn't turn his head and said in a gentle tone. No. That, I didn't expect Mr. Wuming to cook in person. Shiro Amiya said with some embarrassment. Wuming put the cooked food on the plate and said, Don't look at me like this, I'm also a teacher, and teachers are omnipotent. I see, is Mr. Wuming a teacher? Who did Mr. Wuming teach? Shiro Amiya asked curiously. Wuming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya. And Shiro Amiya seemed to be aware of his own behavior. Inquiring about heroic spirits was equivalent to inquiring about their weaknesses. For those who became heroic spirits, their own death was sublimated by the legends, and thus became a weakness. Just like Wuming's previous saber class, Wuming might instantly return to the heroic spirit palace if he used a fire magic spell that was large enough to destroy a servant. Of course, to Wuming, this was just a respawn point. But Wuming was a caster at the moment, so Hyenryong wasn't dead, but Hyenryong wasn't needed anymore. Perhaps only a weapon that contained a large amount of human power would be able to harm Wuming. I'm the great sage who taught the Hero King. Wuming joked as he walked towards the door with a plate of food. Before he left, he added, By the way, I left some ingredients for you and Mr. Amiya. You can use them directly. Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming's back as he left, and then looked at the ingredients on the stove. Mr. Wuming is not as difficult to get along with as Kiritsugu said. With that, Shiro Amiya began to prepare breakfast. On the other side, Wuming came to the edge and saw Mayu, who was sitting on the edge and playing with the elf. It was rare for Meiyu to have a smile on her face. Meiyu. Wuming shouted at Meiyu. Meiyu turned her head and looked at him with a puzzled face, and the smile on her face was gone. Sure enough, it will take a while for Meiyu to grow into a normal child. Meiyu, come and taste the food I made. Wuming put a plate of exquisite food in front of Meiyu. It was a plate of golden omelette rice. As a person who doesn't cook, it was basically impossible to make such a plate of omelette rice, whether it was color or fragrance. However, this was a world full of mysteries. Well, Wuming used magic and added his own sacred aura to this plate of omelette rice, so it looked like it was glowing. Looking at Meiyu looking at the plate of omelette rice but not eating, Wuming sighed. Do you need me to feed you? Wuming asked gently. Meiyu thought for a moment and nodded. Wuming smiled helplessly, and then picked up the plate of omelette rice. Wuming picked up the spoon, and cut a hole in the egg skin of the omelette rice. The rice inside the egg skin instantly broke out, showing the golden rice grains. The rice grains were mixed with ham and vegetables, showing a different kind of beauty. Meiyu looked at this scene, her eyes slightly widened. It can't be helped. Who told this guy to deliberately use magic as an auxiliary means to make it? Wuming scooped up a small spoonful of golden rice with meat and vegetables, gently blew on it, and handed it to Meiyu. Meiyu looked at Wuming, then looked at the spoon in front of her, and finally gently opened her mouth and ate the spoonful of rice. The moment the rice entered her mouth, Wuming could see some ripples in Meiyu's eyes. Wuming smiled. Meiyu slowly chewed the food in her mouth, and Wuming patiently waited. After a moment, Meiyu swallowed the food in her mouth and said, "Delicious." Looking at Meiyu's "I still want to eat" expression, Wuming's smile became more brilliant. Eat more if it's delicious. Okay. Just like this, Wuming slowly fed Meiyu the omelette rice spoon by spoon, and Meiyu ate the food on the spoon that Wuming handed over. This meal took about half an hour. As for whether the omelette rice would get cold, Wuming said that the rice blessed by his skill would not get cold. Finally, Wuming put down the plate and spoon in his hand, and looked at Meiyu who was still savoring the aftertaste. Coincidentally, there was a grain of rice hanging on the corner of Meiyu's mouth. Wuming reached out to remove the grain of rice, but just as Wuming used a finger to pick up the rice, Meiyu opened her mouth and ate the grain of rice. Wuming smiled awkwardly, because at this moment, his finger was still in Meiyu's mouth. After pulling his finger out of Meiyu's mouth, Wuming awkwardly looked at the finger that was covered with Meiyu's saliva. Wash it off. Isn't that disdaining Meiyu for being dirty? Don't wash it off. Then why do I keep this finger covered with saliva? At this moment, Shiro Amiya came out from the corner. Mr. Wuming, I prepared some miso soup for you and Shoayu. Shiro Amiya put 2 bowls of soup in front of Wuming and Meiyu. Thank you very much, Wuming politely said, and then began to drink. Meiyu looked at Wuming pick up the miso soup, and also picked it up. After Wuming finished drinking, he put down the bowl and commented, "Not bad, you really are a good seedling to be the court's husband." Shiro Amiya smiled awkwardly. After all, it was a joke, not a serious one. "It's not as good as the previous egg dumpling rice," Meiyu suddenly said. Is that so? I'm sorry, I'll work harder next time." Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed. After the 2 finished drinking, Shiro Amiya packed up the cutlery including Wuming's egg dumpling rice and left. "You can't be so rude, Meiyu," Wuming taught Meiyu. "But it's really not as good as the egg dumpling rice." Meiyu tilted her head and said innocently. Wuming was a little helpless. He knew that Meiyu now lacked the emotions of a normal human. This kind of situation could not be solved by magic. It was better to let nature take its course. Wuming patted Meiyu's head and said, "You're right, but you still have a lot to learn. Remember not to define something too early." "I know, big brother." Meiyu nodded. At this time, Wuming just remembered that he did not tell Meiyu his name. After all, the 2 just met last night, after which Meiyu fell asleep, and did not wake up until this morning. At this moment Meiyu, who did not cry or make a fuss, was considered very good among her peers. "I'm sorry, it's my negligence not to tell you my name. My name is Wuming." "Wuming. My name is Shitsuki Meiyu." Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you." "Nice trip." Chapter 103. After breakfast, Wuming was going to take Mayu out to buy some clothes. At the door, Amiya Kiritsugu came out of the house. Where are you going to take it? This seemed to be a very plain sentence, but Wuming heard another meaning. It was as if Wuming wanted to take away Amiya Kiritsugu's water bag in the desert. I'm going to take my master to buy some clothes. Mr. Amiya, are you interested in coming together? Wuming said with a gentle smile. For some reason, Wuming always smiled when he was Hyunryong. Wuming would fake a smile to those who didn't need it, but Wuming would smile from the bottom of his heart to those who needed it. Amiya Kiritsugu didn't speak. After a while he said, "Can you let Shiro go with us? Shiro hasn't bought new clothes for a long time." Wuming didn't make any objection to this, but looked deeply at Amiya Kiritsugu. Then Wuming said, "Of course I like children very much." A moment later, Shiro Amiya was called out by Amiya Kiritsugu. "Shiro, you follow them. Buy whatever clothes you want. You haven't bought new clothes for a long time." Amiya Kiritsugu said and handed some money to Shiro Amiya. Shiro Amiya took the money and followed Wuming and Mayu. After all, Wei Gongshi was wearing a new set of clothes that he had just bought. After Wuming left with Shitsuki Mayu and Shiro Amiya, Amiya Kiritsugu lit a cigarette. Amiya Kiritsugu exhaled a long smoke. Hero King. Hyunryong. Amiya Kiritsugu couldn't help but think of the words Shiro Amiya said when he sent him food. Mr. Wuming just said that he is the Hero King's teacher. Kiritsugu, do you know the Hero King? Amiya Kiritsugu quickly finished a cigarette. If it's really you, then it's really bad. After all, in the mythology, the reason why Hyunryong came to Uruk to teach the Hero King was because Hyunryong liked humans very much. And Wuming to Shitsuki Mayu, who was a human and his master, would not allow Amiya Kiritsugu's wish. Suddenly, Amiya Kiritsugu knelt on the ground, covered his mouth with his hand, and coughed a few times. A few drops of red blood dripped to the ground. Is it time? Then, Amiya Kiritsugu stood up and went back to the house. Wuming held Mayu's hand, followed by Shiro Amiya. Looking at the scene that she had never seen before, Mayu opened her eyes curiously. Wuming specially studied the magic barrier of the Shitsuki family for Mayu. That is, to prevent the wishes of the world from reaching Mayu's ears and causing pollution to Mayu. Because he was a caster, Wuming's ability to analyze magic and other things was still very strong. However, Wuming did not analyze the barrier by himself, but used the gift given by Zelik. Master, after testing, the magic barrier around Miss Mayu is working well at the moment, and it is comparable to the magic barrier of the Shitsuki family. Thank you for your hard work, Kalas. You are too serious, Master. This is my pleasure. Wuming was wearing a translucent golden-green crown similar to a dragon's horn on his head at the moment. This crown was the high-level magic headwear that Zelik made for Wuming with the second method, golden green stone. Wuming couldn't help but recall that moment. After Wuming came to this world, he couldn't wait to use this magic dress. In the forest, after Wuming activated golden green stone, the original ordinary ring turned into a golden green crown similar to a dragon's horn, floating in front of Wuming. Nice to meet you, Master. I am your special magic dress, golden green stone. Kalas Billet. Listening to this emotionless female voice, Wuming felt a little uncomfortable. After all, Wuming hoped that the artificial elf in his magic dress could be more lively. After all, Wuming didn't think of using it as a prop, but as a partner. Nice to meet you. Can I call you Kalas? Wuming walked and asked the dragon's horn floating in the air. This is your right, Master. Wuming stopped and looked at golden green stone. Listen to me, Kalas. You can call me Master, but don't think of me as your master. Golden green dragon's horn stopped floating in the air, as if it was waiting for Wuming's next sentence. We are partners who will live and die together. Remember, I am not an ordinary servant. I am a heroic spirit who has not died. After that, Wuming began to walk again. Golden green dragon's horn was silent for a moment, and then followed Wuming's pace. Then it tightly wrapped around Wuming's head. Wuming touched the dragon's horn and smiled. Then Wuming used concealment magic to temporarily hide it. Feeling someone pulling his hand, Wuming came back to his senses and looked at Mayu beside him. What's wrong, Mayu? Wuming asked Mayu. Mayu pointed in a direction and said, "That one." Wuming looked at the direction Mayu pointed. A restaurant with an omelette appeared in front of Wuming's eyes. Wuming instantly knew what Mayu was thinking. Wuming smiled happily, then squatted down and said, "Have you just eaten, you little greedy cat?" Then he scratched Mayu's nose with his finger. Mayu was a little panicked. She covered her little nose and looked at Wuming blankly. Looking at such a cute Mayu, Wuming smiled even more brightly. "Let's come here after we buy clothes, okay?" Wuming asked softly. "Okay." Mayu nodded and then grabbed Wuming's hand again. Wuming stood up and looked at Shiro Amiya behind him. "Amiya, come later, it's my treat." Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming with some surprise, then asked weakly, How did Mr. Wuming pay?" Shiro Amiya just remembered that Wuming, as a follower, had no money, so how did he buy those ingredients? The money Kiritsugu gave was not enough to buy clothes and food. "Ha ha." Wuming laughed twice, then said, "I'm the teacher of the Hero King, who has all the treasures in the world. The tuition is enough for me to eat and drink." "So that's how it is, then Mr. Wuming is very rich." "Ah, of course." In this way, the three of them went farther and farther away. However, Shiro Amiya did not notice a problem. Everything that came with a servant was made of magic, but Wuming's items could be left in the modern world. This was also because Shiro Amiya did not understand the servants and did not understand the Holy Grail War. So Wuming exposed his information. Even if he wanted to tell Amiya Kiritsugu, it was fine. Wuming had already seen that Amiya Kiritsugu's vitality was almost gone. Chapter 104. Wuming brought Mayu and Shiro Amiya out of the department store. The three of them did not have anything in their hands, as they were all kept by Wuming in his Dragonist relic. Wuming brought Mayu and Shiro Amiya to the restaurant that they came across earlier. After ordering a portion of omelette each for Mayu and Shiro Amiya, Wuming brought the two of them to a seat. After a while, the waiter served the omelette. Due to Wuming's actions, Shiro Amiya was not reserved around Wuming. He picked up the spoon and said, "I'm going to eat." Then he began to enjoy the meal. On the other hand, Mayu kept looking at Wuming as if to say, "Why aren't you feeding me yet?" Wuming smiled and shook his head helplessly. Then he said, "Remember to eat by yourself in the future. Don't always let others feed you." "Okay." Mayu nodded and looked at Wuming with anticipation. Then Wuming picked up the plate of omelette, picked up the spoon, and cut open the egg. Then he began to feed her just like how he fed Mayu this morning. Shiro Amiya looked at the heartwarming scene with jealousy in his eyes. "When will you be able to feed me the cub?" Shiro Amiya seemed to have realized something and shook his head frantically. No, I'm going to be a righteous man. How can I let others feed me?" With that thought, he seemed to be motivated and began to eat in big mouthfuls. After Shiro Amiya finished eating, Wuming only fed her half of the omelette. Then, under Shiro Amiya's gaze, Wuming finished feeding her. Wuming picked up a tissue and wiped the corner of Mayu's mouth. Then he said, "Okay, let's go." "Okay," Mayu said calmly. Then she added, "This omelette isn't good. It's not as good as yours." Wuming looked at Mayu, who wanted to say something. "But it's very warm." Wuming was silent. As a human who could grow up normally, Wuming could not imagine what Mayu, who was almost 6 years old, had experienced in the past 6 years. She was only allowed to see her mother and live in that small house. She was not allowed to read books or understand the outside world. She was not allowed to have feelings for anyone. She was not allowed to do anything. Although this was for the good of Mayu and the other divine children, it was still a little too cruel. After a while, Wuming picked up Mayu. "Mayu, maybe you don't understand now, but you have to remember that your name is Mayu. You are no longer Shoayu. You don't need to bear any responsibility of the Shitsuki family anymore. Because I am here." After saying this, Wuming's aura suddenly changed, as if a god had descended. Mayu, who was picked up by Wuming, opened her big red eyes and looked at Wuming. At this moment, Mayu's eyes were slightly moist. Moreover, Mayu seemed to feel the feelings conveyed by Wuming. Then Mayu lay in Wuming's arms, closed her eyes and fell asleep. Before Mayu fell asleep, Wuming vaguely heard a sentence. "Thank you." Wuming suppressed his aura. and then Wuming cast a mute magic on Mayu, and said to Shiro Amiya, "Let's go, Shiro Amiya." "Yes. Yes." Shiro Amiya looked at Wuming with some surprise. Now, Shiro Amiya knew why his adoptive father, Amiya Kiritsugu, was so afraid of followers. Soon, Wuming carried the sleeping Mayu, followed by Shiro Amiya, and the three people returned to the Amiya mansion. After Wuming settled Mayu, he followed Shiro Amiya to see Amiya Kiritsugu. "As long as I am here, Mayu will not become the great Holy Grail." After leaving this sentence, Wuming left. Shiro Amiya looked at the gloomy face of Amiya Kiritsugu and didn't know what to do. Amiya Kiritsugu's face was gloomy. He should have thought that if it was really that Hyunryong, whether it was out of love for humans, or because Mayu was his master, Wuming would protect Mayu. Then, Amiya Kiritsugu spat out a mouthful of blood and sat on the ground. "Kiritsugu." Shiro Amiya quickly ran to Amiya Kiritsugu's side and helped him up. At this moment, Amiya Kiritsugu's face was even more aged. "Hey, Dad. What's wrong with you?" Shiro Amiya said anxiously. Amiya Kiritsugu shook his head. He knew that his body couldn't take it anymore. He spat out blood because he had finally found a way to save the world, but he was stopped by an invincible person. "Shiro, you must remember our wish." Shiro Amiya looked at the current Amiya Kiritsugu and nodded heavily. On the other side, Wuming returned to Mayu's room. Looking at the still sleeping Mayu, Wuming smiled with relief. Wuming was now even more convinced of what he had said. "I'm here. I will definitely protect you, Mayu." As if hearing Wuming's voice, Mayu slowly opened her eyes. Then, Mayu got up in an instant and threw herself into Wuming's arms, just like a newborn bird throwing itself into its parents' arms. Wuming hugged Mayu. And then Wuming found that Mayu's eyes had turned golden at this moment. Just like himself. Wuming's hair and eyes turned golden because of the high-density divinity brought by his caster rank, Hyunryong. Mayu's original eyes were undoubtedly red, but at this moment, they became the same as Wuming's. Is it the Holy Grail's ability to grant wishes? Wuming thought of Mayu as the Holy Grail, who had the ability to passively grant other people's wishes before the age of 7. Although Wuming had used the emerald to simulate the Shitsuki family's magic barrier, someone as strong as Wuming could still penetrate the magic barrier and convey wishes to Mayu at a very close distance. It turned out to be the case. Is this the reason why I said I'm here? After all, the Holy Grail was not omnipotent. It could only choose the most appropriate way to grant wishes at present. Perhaps for the judgment of the Holy Grail system, for Mayu, letting Mayu become Wuming's family and be protected by Wuming was the most ideal idea of no need to bear the responsibility of the Shitsuki family. No wonder Mayu was so tired that she fell asleep. It turned out that the Holy Grail played a role in fulfilling Wuming's wish, which led to Mayu's exhaustion. Well, this is not bad. Then you are my sister. Please take care of me, Mayu. With that, Wuming put one of his hands that was holding Mayu on Mayu's head and touched it. Well, please take care of me, brother. In this way, the person who Shitsuki Mayu died, the so-called Mayu who was Wuming's sister was born, and a new life began. Chapter 105. In the afternoon, a golden-haired, golden-eyed young man walked on the streets of Winterwood City with a smile on his face. Some of the more powerful people in Winterwood City looked at Wuming with shock and relief when they saw Wuming. From time to time, he would stop at a gourmet shop to buy some delicious food. In the end, the young man would always visit the food market. When he walked to a familiar shop, the young man had just reached the door when an uncle who was the store manager walked out and shouted, "Yo, Amiya, you're here to sell food again." Wuming looked at the store manager who greeted him and smiled. "Yes, I have to make my cute sister's favorite omelet rice. As expected, the meat in your shop is still the freshest." The uncle laughed. "Ha ha ha, of course. I've been running this shop in Winterwood City for more than 10 years. The freshness of the meat is one of the best." At this time, the store manager of the next shop suddenly appeared. If you want to talk about the quality of the ingredients, you have to look for my shop. Although the meat in my shop is slightly inferior, the vegetables in my shop are the freshest in Winterwood City." "You old man. Are you trying to make trouble for me?" You're the one who's trying to make trouble for Brother Amiya. It's obvious that Brother Amiya wants to cook for his beloved sister. You actually sold your stale vegetables to Brother Amiya while I was busy and closed the shop. I think you're provoking me." Looking at the two quarrelsome store managers who looked like they were about to fight, Wuming felt helpless. "The two of you have a good relationship," Wuming said gently. The two uncles had taken root here ever since Wuming bought food here. Although they looked like they were in conflict, they were actually quarrelsome. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put their shops together to do business. Hearing Wuming's words, the two uncles snorted and then took out the ingredients that they had prepared. "Amiya, this is the best meat that I've carefully selected. I'll sell it to you at the same price as before." "Brother Amiya, these are the vegetables that I personally picked. I'm selling them to you at the same price as before." Wuming smiled helplessly, paid the bill, thanked him and left. Then the two uncles began to discuss. "Brother Amiya is such a good returnee. Why does he always buy ingredients personally?" Another uncle said. "It's obvious that you're ignorant. Amiya dotes on his sister a lot. Every time he cooks for his sister, he buys the ingredients himself." "That's true. Otherwise, with Brother Amiya's family business, he wouldn't need to run errands himself." "That's great. I wonder if he'll take a fancy to my daughter." "Forget about it. I think my niece is better." It was another round of shoulder to shoulder, as if they were about to fight. Wuming, who hadn't gone far, listened to the conversation between the two uncles' store managers and felt helpless. At this time, Wuming had been in this world for almost 5 years. 5 years ago, Wuming used magic to hypnotize various high-level officials and underworld leaders in Winterwood City, making them all think that Wuming was a very powerful senior who had returned from overseas. He also used magic to hypnotize the director of a large company with an address in Winterwood. Then Wuming put his name in this company. After that, he took out the few remaining treasures in his dragonist and exchanged them for a large amount of currency. After all, when he was in Nasarek, Wuming took out most of his treasures to supply Nasarek. Since then, Wuming's treasures had shrunk significantly. At this time, Wuming's dragonist had no treasures except for some necessary props. Also, after Wuming and Mayu came to Amiya family, Amiya Kiritsugu passed away not long after, as if he had fallen asleep. Wuming didn't plan to help Amiya Kiritsugu with his treatment, and Amiya Kiritsugu didn't plan to let Shiro Amiya or himself ask Wuming for help. That man already had a trace of death. No, it should be said that he died long ago. If there was no Shiro Amiya, then the only thing left was a walking corpse acting in order to save the world. Wuming adopted Shiro Amiya and Amiya Mayu as Amiya Kiritsugu's distant relative from abroad. That's right, at this time, Wuming's name was Wuming Amiya. Although it wasn't much, the name was always fake, so there was no need to pay attention to it. Wuming returned to the gorgeous Amiya mansion, put down the ingredients, and prepared to pick up Mayu, who was about to finish school. Mayu was taught the basics by Wuming, and then waited for about a year. After all, the secret of the Shitsuki family attracted many magicians. When Mayu was in primary school. At this time, Mayu was 10 years old and was in primary school, while Shiro Amiya was 17 years old and was in high school. Shiro Amiya gradually became stronger after Amiya Kiritsugu passed away, just like how he always refused Wuming's pick up and drop off. Wuming still remembered the words of the 12-year-old Shiro Amiya. "I'm already 12 years old. I've grown up. I don't need Big Brother to pick me up." Because Wuming adopted Shiro Amiya and Amiya Mayu as a distant relative of the Amiya family, both of them called him Big Brother. Mayu didn't want to be outdone, and seemed to want to go to school alone. In the end, Wuming resolutely refused. What a joke! Mayu was only 6 years old at that time. There was still about a year before the characteristics of the Shitsuki family godchild disappeared. It was inevitable that there would be magicians who knew about the Shitsuki family's godchild. Amiya Kiritsugu was suspicious because the Shitsuki family deliberately hid girls under 7 years old. There would definitely be magicians who suspected or even knew about the Shitsuki family's godchild. As for Mayu's golden pupils, Wuming used a special kind of magic, similar to contact lenses, to turn Mayu's golden pupils into a special color between orange and pale gold. For the time being, he called it orange gold. Wuming also changed his pupils to orange gold. Together with Shiro Amiya's orange-yellow pupils, they looked like a family. Wuming locked the door and headed towards Meiyo's primary school, Suechuanhara Academy. To be precise, it was the primary school of Suechuanhara Academy. Because Wuming was worried about Meiyu, Wuming gradually quickened his pace. He arrived at Suechuanhara Academy. Suechuanhara Academy had a high school section and a primary school section. Wuming calculated the time. Shiro Amiya, who was in the high school section, and Meiyu, who was in the primary school section, were almost finished with school. However, Wuming still walked to the entrance of the primary school section. Next to the high school section of Suechuanhara Academy, there was another school, which was the primary school of Suechuanhara Academy. After waiting for a moment, the school bell rang. Slowly, people began to walk out of the school. These were all returning home, including Meiyu and Shiro. After a moment, Wuming saw a petite figure in the crowd. Meiyu. Wuming shouted at Meiyu with a smile. Brother. Meiyu trotted and sped up, throwing herself into Wuming's arms. Chapter 106. Wuming crouched down and hugged Meiyu, who was running towards him. He stroked Meiyo's head and said, "How was it? Did you listen to the teacher and wait for me in school?" "Yes, I was very obedient today. Also, I made a new friend today." Meiyu looked at Wuming with her big eyes and said cheerfully, "Oh, friend. What kind of friend?" Wuming was a little happy. Meiyu had been in this school for almost 4 years. Wuming still remembered that at the beginning, many people thought that Meiyu was a strange child, and no one was willing to be friends with her. After all, Meiyu had just developed feelings for him. It was no wonder that people would say that about Meiyu. At that time, Meiyu didn't care much about it. Wuming once asked Meiyu why she wanted to go to school. According to Meiyu, going to school was something that Wuming wanted. Meiyu would do what Wuming wanted her to do. This made Wuming very helpless at that time. This couldn't be blamed on Meiyu, when she had just developed feelings for him. Other than Wuming, even Shiro Amiya, who she saw every day, couldn't attract Meiyu's attention. Meiyu only cared about Wuming. At that time, Wuming followed Meiyu almost every day in spirit form. Firstly, it was to protect Meiyu. Secondly, it was to pay attention to Meiyu's behavior in school. Wuming wanted to slowly guide Meiyu according to her interests in school. In the end, Wuming discovered that Meiyu's interests could be said to be 0, or it could be said to be all. Meiyu was very interested in this world that she didn't see before. Especially under Wuming's guidance, Meiyu developed feelings for him. However, Meiyu wasn't interested in anything in particular. Moreover, Wuming was called to the office more than once by the head teacher because of Meiyu's lack of feelings in school. Wuming had no choice but to use the reason that Meiyu had been in a car accident and suffered severe brain damage to dispel the doubts of the teachers. Fortunately, around 2 years ago, Meiyu's feelings at that time had almost completely recovered. Other than her cold voice and introverted personality, she was basically the same as an ordinary person. From then on, Meiyu began to gradually make friends. Every time Meiyu made a friend, she would confide in him. Wuming would also listen patiently and ask Meiyu from time to time. It was the same this time. "She's behind. Let me introduce her to you," Meiyu asked with a red face. "And I also want to meet Meiyu's new friend." Wuming looked in the direction that Meiyu pointed. A little girl with golden curly hair in a ponytail was hiding in a corner. Her small head was poking out to look at Wuming and Meiyu. "Erica, over here." Meiyu waved at the little girl with golden curly hair in a ponytail. The little girl named Erica heard Meiyu's call and walked over awkwardly. "Brother, this is Erica, Erica Ainsworth," Meiyu said to Wuming. Wuming looked at Erica with an expressionless face. Erica also looked at Wuming with a strange smile. "Is that so? You're Erica. I'm Meiyu's brother. My name is Amiya Wuming. Nice to meet you." "Nice to meet you." However, after Erica finished speaking, her mouth changed as if she said something, but Meiyu didn't see it. Wuming's expression didn't change. He said to Meiyu, "We have something to do today. I'm really sorry. Erica, we'll leave first." With that, Wuming pulled Mayu out of the Suechuan primary school. Erica didn't move from her spot. A moment later, a teenager wearing the Suechuan primary school uniform came over. Erica, are you sure it's him? And, is that so? Then let's go. With that, the teenager left with Erica. Wuming held Mayu's hand and walked on the road. Mayu asked with some concern. Brother, what's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Wuming held Mayu's hand and said while walking, Mayu, when did you meet that Erica? Although Mayu was puzzled, she still told Wuming the information about Erica. When I was eating lunch this afternoon, Erica suddenly ran to me and said that she admired me and wanted to be friends with me. The strange thing is, I've never seen Erica in school. Maybe she's a new student. Wuming was relieved. This new year, Wuming felt more than once that someone was watching him. And there were more than once magicians who attacked the Emiya mansion. Although these people were dealt with by Wuming, but every time they were dealt with, the magician would turn into a puppet. With Wuming's eyes, he could naturally see that this was the most basic magic of magicians, replacement magic. This was a high-level method of replacing a person's personality with a puppet. The only one who could use this kind of magic was one of the three families of the Yu family, the House of Einstein Barons. Wuming didn't know whether the other party was Einstein Barons or not, and didn't know why the other party didn't take the initiative to come, but this didn't affect Wuming's fear. Wuming secretly gave Mayu the Emerald Stone in order to prevent Mayu from being harmed during school, and also set up a large number of teleportation magic on Mayu. If there were any accidents, Wuming would be able to teleport over in an instant. Moreover, in the past 5 years, Wuming had transformed the Emerald Stone into a noble relic. Emerald Stone. Collis Barrel, Chrysoberyl level. C+ type. Human noble relic distance. 0.50 maximum capture. 100 people. It was a magic attire specially made by the second mage, Keshua Zelrich Subian Augustus. It was a magic attire with artificial spirits. Normally, it would be used as a head ornament, but it could borrow the magic of a parallel world to perform detection, scanning, analysis, simulation, disguise, transformation, warning, defense, and a series of other types of high-level magic attire. After becoming a noble artifact, its performance became even more perfect. However, because it was a magic attire, its level could only reach C rank. Collis's intelligence was quite high. Wuming asked Collis to take care of Mayu. After much reluctance, Collis followed Wuming's arrangement and hid on Mayu's body, becoming an accessory on her school bag. As for the Erica he met today, Wuming could feel that she was a living god-level character. At that time, the words Erica mouthed were Hyenryong. This made Wuming shocked. This meant that the other party already knew his identity. Looking at how fearless she was, she probably had a way to deal with him. Wuming was puzzled as to how he was exposed. Since then, after knowing that there was a hidden enemy, Shiro Amiya's memory of him had been erased by Wuming. Of course, this was under the condition that Shiro Amiya was willing to do it. Mayu, our peaceful days are coming to an end. Mayu was stunned. Wuming could feel that Mayu's hand was trembling. Do you mean that I'm going to be separated from brother? Mayu said to Wuming with a gloomy face. Of course not. I said that as long as I'm here, you don't have to bear the responsibility of the Shitsuki family. Wuming looked at Mayu seriously. Mayu nodded seriously. Then the two of them walked towards the Emiya mansion. Chapter 107. After returning home, Wuming activated his magic workshop in the Emiya mansion. The golden staff of the 7 snakes floated in the middle of the magic workshop. The entire Emiya mansion had been completely transformed by Wuming into his own temple, the Hyenryong Temple of Worship. Shiro Amiya had also returned to the Emiya mansion. As soon as he entered the door, Shiro Amiya shouted, "Brother! Mayu!" Wuming appeared and looked at Shiro Amiya. "What do you know, Shiro?" Wuming asked. Shiro Amiya gave the letter he received in school to Wuming. Wuming opened it. "Dear Hyenryong, your concealment methods are indeed brilliant, making the House of Einstein Barons search for nearly 5 years before we found the Holy Grail container. Next, the House of Einstein Barons will start the Holy Grail War. In order to fight for the Great Holy Grail, Shitsuki Mayu, please look forward to it. Wuming finished reading the letter and looked at Shiro Amiya. Shiro, who gave you this letter? Shiro Amiya was a little embarrassed, but he still said, it was my good friend in school, Yalinshu, who gave it to me. Wuming finally understood why Shiro Amiya was so unbearable. A good friend who had been with him for a few years suddenly turned against him. This made Shiro Amiya, who was not a magician, feel a little overwhelmed. It seems that Yalinshu is a fake name. The other party is very likely from the house of Einstein barons. Big brother, are you talking about the destroyed Einsbalin, one of the 3 families? Because of Wuming's teaching from time to time, Shiro Amiya could be regarded as a first-class magician at this moment. However, Shiro Amiya was talented in swordsmanship and projection magic. According to Wuming's suggestion, Shiro Amiya could practice projection magic more. Any basic magic should not be ignored, just like the House of Einstein Baron's replacement magic. Wuming often used advanced item creation to create some items or weapons he had seen before for Shiro Amiya to analyze their composition and practice projection magic. Also, Wuming taught Shiro Amiya basic swordsmanship, but he did not teach him anything else. In Wuming's view, Shiro Amiya's talent in swordsmanship was far above projection magic. Wuming could only guide his path, not teach him. Shiro Amiya was a little sad, then said, what the hell is going on? Didn't Mayo's ability disappear? Why did the Holy Grail War happen, brother? Because of Wuming, Shiro Amiya understood the rules and requirements of the Holy Grail War very early. This is the fate of the Shitsuki family, Wuming said seriously. Wuming once visited the Holy Church in Winterwood City. A priest named Yen Fengili confessed everything to Wuming. The godchild of the Shitsuki family was artificially created 400 years ago for the purpose of the Holy Grail War. The godchild of the Shitsuki family was used as a vessel to create the Holy Grail War. By sacrificing the souls of the servants, the Holy Grail War was created. In the Fourth Holy Grail War, 2 of the 3 families who organized the Holy Grail War were killed, and the remaining family also suffered a great loss. They might not even be able to maintain their status in the magic world, so the Holy Grail War was never held again. The Holy Grail War was to use cards with the servants' power to turn the masters into servants. 7 servants would fight each other, and the wish would be fulfilled on the last day. This is a war sooner or later. I'm going to the clock tower in England. You and Mayu stay here. Don't go anywhere. Don't leave this house. This is already my magic workshop. Even assassin can't sneak in, and berserker can't come in. I know. I'll participate in the Holy Grail War and protect Mayu, Shiro Amiya said solemnly. Wuming flicked Shiro's head. Let's not talk about whether you have a card or not. I'm here. You don't need to worry about the Holy Grail War. Shiro Amiya covered his forehead with a pained expression. Wuming thought for a moment, and took out some defensive items from his dragonist. He told Shiro Amiya how to use it, and Wuming created a celestial lock. This is a celestial lock. Look at the other party's fearless face. I'm afraid that the other party has a divine servant. Take it first, just in case you need it. I know, brother. Shiro Amiya took the celestial lock with a serious face. Wuming looked at Mayu, who had been hiding in the corner from the beginning, and instantly came behind her. Mayu. Dash. Mayu was obviously shocked and looked at Wuming with resentment. Brother Wuming. Looking at Mayu, who was embarrassed because she was caught eavesdropping, Wuming smiled. I know you have the ability to bear all this, so I told you about the magic world from the beginning. But I don't want you to learn magic. I also know that you're working hard. You've basically finished reading all the high-level books you want. Wuming has always bought a lot of books. At first, it was about the ways of the world and developing feelings. Later, Mayu began to ask for more high-level books such as anatomy, mechanics, and so on. Wuming didn't refuse Mayu. After all, this was what Mayu wanted, not what Wuming wanted. Mayu looked at Wuming seriously. But I'm also your servant master. And you're my master. It's natural for me to protect you. Wuming picked up Mayu's hand and revealed the hidden command incantation. Also, you're my sister. With this, how can I let you bear all these? Wuming hid the command incantation again, and said to Mayu with a gentle face, "Don't worry, I'm here." Mayu's eyes were wet. She once again remembered what Wuming said that day. "Because I'm here. Moreover, your brother Shiro is not someone to be trifled with. You don't need to think about these things at all. You just need to think about the future." "I understand, Brother Wuming. I'll stay in my room." Mayu nodded and said in a choked voice. Wuming smiled with relief. "Wargate." As his voice fell, a dark portal appeared in front of Wuming. Wuming waved his hand, and a pendant flew out from Mayu's room. The pendant changed in the air, and turned into a pair of golden-green dragon horn headwear, and firmly put on Wuming's head. At this moment, Wuming looked more like a dragon. "Shiro, take care of Mayu." Shiro Amiya nodded solemnly. After looking at Mayu, Wuming stepped into the portal. Then the portal disappeared, leaving Shiro Amiya with a serious and uneasy face and Amiya Mayu with a praying face. At this time, Wuming appeared in a place he had been before. The familiar corridor, the familiar door. Looking at the familiar door in front of him, Wuming knocked on the door. "Please come in." Then Wuming opened the door and went straight in. Chapter 108. Wuming opened the door and went in. What he saw was the same as the other world. In the dim room sat a sturdy old man with red eyes and a short white beard. Kitty Zelik Shabine Augustus. "Should I call you Hyunryong or Wuming?" Zelik said with a smile. "Whatever you want. It's my name anyway." "I'm here for something," Wuming said indifferently, then sat down and poured himself a cup of tea. "Zelik from the other world asked you to come, right? You want to ask about the information of this world, right?" Zelik asked. "Yes, but can you please answer me? How did the humans in this world end up being destroyed?" "I promised Zelik to save the world if I could," Wuming said after taking a sip of tea. "The disaster in this world has been solved by me and my other self." "Solved?" Wuming looked at Zelik. "Because the other me in the other world sensed a disaster that could affect parallel worlds. The other me began to unite with the other me in the other worlds. This world of mine has already been saved by the me in the other worlds through the second method of uniting." Wuming was relieved. After all, Wuming also noticed that the magicians in Winterwood City seemed to have received some kind of notice and were no longer so extreme. Then could it be because of this that the other party is not in a hurry to hold the Holy Grail War? Wuming thought. "I need more information. Seeing that my other self trusts you so much, I'll reluctantly help you." Zelik looked at the dragon horn hair ornament on Wuming's head. After about half an hour, Wuming left the room. Because the Zelik of this world knew that Wuming would come to this world long ago. When Wuming appeared, Zelik found out about Wuming's whereabouts through various means. Because Wuming lived in Winterwood City for 5 years, Zelik also did some research on Winterwood City. Therefore, Zelik knew a lot of information that Wuming did not know. According to Wuming's description, Zelik judged that the other party might be the last person of Ainsworth, named Julian Ainsworth. Although the 3 families of the Yu family suffered heavy casualties in the Holy Grail War, including 2 families including Ainsworth, Ainsworth's last person, Julian Ainsworth, did not want to face this fact. Therefore, even if he knew that humanity had been saved and the world would not be destroyed, Julian still wanted to continue the Holy Grail War. According to Zelik, Julian's wish might still be to save all of humanity, because as long as one was human, there would be no future without danger. With danger, there would be progress. Zelik knew about the heroic spirits of the 7 class cards and their users. Although those users had long said that the personalities of some people who had died long ago were replaced with machines on the dolls. Other than that, Zelik did not have any other information. After getting the information, Wuming left. Although this world might not be the world that brought danger to other parallel worlds as Zelik said, Wuming did not plan to leave. The main reason was because Mayu had left a deep impression on Wuming. Wuming could not abandon Mayu. There was also Shiro Amiya, the magician who had normal human thinking. Because of Wuming's influence, Shiro Amiya had long abandoned Amiya Kiritsuga's wrong wish, and had his own new and correct wish. Wuming opened the portal, and returned to the Amiya mansion. As soon as he returned, Wuming discovered that there were people fighting in the courtyard of the Amiya mansion. It was a tentacle-like monster and Shiro Amiya who had used a class card. In one of the rooms of the Amiya mansion, there was an injured purple-haired girl who was about the same age as Shiro Amiya. She was lying unconscious on the ground. At that moment, Wuming more or less knew what had happened. Wuming waved his hand, and an oval lens appeared beside Wuming. Wuming walked toward the purple-haired girl's room while watching Shiro Amiya and the strange tentacle-like monster fight. The tentacle-like monster was 3 meters tall, and its face seemed to be a skull mask. It looked like the monster was made of tentacles. This is assassin. Wuming discovered the monster's true form. That was right. This was the assassin user of the card in the Holy Grail War. He watched as Shiro Amiya held 2 swords in his hands and kept dodging assassins' attacks. From time to time he would throw flying swords and stab assassins back. On the other hand, the tentacle-like monster formed by assassin was completely unaffected. The huge tentacle-like fist kept bombarding the ground. Some of the marble slabs on the ground in the courtyard were smashed away, and soil was splashed everywhere. The originally beautiful Amiya mansion was now a mess. As if the time was right, Shiro Amiya dodged one of Assassin's attacks and jumped onto Assassin's back. He held a pair of black and white swords in his hands and stabbed toward Assassin's back. In an instant, an explosion occurred inside the tentacle-like monster. Then there was a heart-wrenching scream. Ah! Shiro Amiya jumped to the side of the wall and looked at Assassin who was curled up. He stretched out his hand, and a black bow appeared in Shiro Amiya's hand. Then, Wei Gongshiro projected a slender, spiral-shaped sword. This is the rainbow sword? Yes, Wuming recognized this sword. This was the famous weapon of Fergus MacRoy in Celtic legend Caladbog. Because it was shaped like a spiral, it was also called the spiral sword. Because Wuming had met Fergus before, he recognized this sword. Although he was a strange guy. At this moment, this rainbow sword was obviously very different from the real rainbow sword. It was too slender, as if it was modified for shooting. Let's call it the fake spiral sword. I see projection magic, Wuming suddenly realized, then said. I'm really worthy of the future you, Shiro. With Wuming's eyesight, he could already see the original body of the hero spirit card Shiro Amiya used. If there was no accident, it was the future Shiro Amiya who became a hero spirit after death. Shiro Amiya drew his bow and aimed at the curled-up tentacle ball, but a cherry-colored scarf happened to float by. Shiro Amiya seemed to have thought of something and put down the bow. Wuming smiled. Wuming once taught Shiro Amiya that once the opponent was determined to be the enemy, don't give the enemy a chance to breathe. Unless Wei Gongshiro held the pseudo-spiraling sword in a reverse grip, and with the speed of lightning, he fiercely stabbed backwards. A purple-haired man with a skull mask with missing legs and arms appeared behind Shiro Amiya. The fake spiral sword steadily stabbed into his abdomen. Why? The purple-haired man asked in shock. You're the one who said it. Your tentacles can move freely after leaving you. Unless he had absolute confidence in winning. Chapter 109. Shiro Amiya pulled out the pseudo-spiraling blade, and Assassin fell to the ground weakly. No. I don't want to die. I don't want to. Assassin's card user crawled forward with great difficulty. Shiro Amiya jumped down from the wall, dispelled the bow and sword in his hands, and reformed the twin blades. He walked step by step towards Assassin's card user. If I didn't activate the transfer technique in time, your sister Sakura would probably have the same idea as you, Shiro Amiya said calmly. But Sakura isn't dead. I was only following Master Julian's orders. Assassin's card user seemed to have thought of something, and stopped talking with a face full of disbelief. Ha. Ha 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 ha. What Master Julian? Damn it. Fortunately, Sakura was saved by you. Shiro Amiya, come on, finish me off. Finish off a dead person like me. Assassin's card user first laughed, then cried, and then asked Shiro Amiya to finish him off. Wuming turned off the X-ray mirror, and walked into the room where the girl called Sakura was. As soon as he entered, Wuming smelled the thick scent of blood. Wuming took a closer look, and saw that Sakura's chest and back were covered in blood. If he was not mistaken, it was caused by Assassin. Could this girl be Shiro's lover? Wuming said with interest. After joking, Wuming made a few gestures in the air, and a few lune runes that symbolized healing were attached to Sakura's body. With a burst of green light, Sakura's clothes instantly became brand new. If not for the bloodstains, anyone would have thought that she was a sleeping girl. Wuming walked out of the room and gently closed the door. Wuming then met Shiro Amiya, who had finished off Assassin. At this moment, Shiro Amiya was still in his heroic spirit state. He wore a red headband on his forehead, and a white cloak fluttered behind him. He wore a black tight shirt and long pants, and the red sleeve on his left arm was tightly pressed against his skin, revealing the muscles that were usually hidden under his clothes. Weigong Shiro took out a palm-sized card with a skeleton mask and a dagger drawn on it, and handed it to Wuming. Big brother, it's just as you said. After I killed Assassin, he turned into a doll. This card is stuck on the doll. Once a magician attacked Shiro Amiya. After Wuming killed him, the magician turned into a mechanical doll. Therefore, Shiro Amiya also knew about the doll. Wuming took the card and said to Shiro Amiya, I've healed your lover. Go and take a look. She should be waking up soon. Shiro Amiya blushed a little at Wuming's words. He then stopped his heroic spirit state and handed the archer card in his hand to Wuming. After saying, Thank you, big brother. He quickly ran into Sakura's room. Wuming looked at the two cards in his hands and frowned. Although the user of the assassin card was easily defeated by Weigong Shiro, that was only because the user of the assassin card wasn't strong. It didn't mean that the card itself was weak. Wuming could clearly feel the presence of heroic spirits in these two cards. Especially this assassin card. Wuming could feel that there was more than one heroic spirit in it. There were about 19 of them, but each user could only use the power of one heroic spirit. Wuming turned on the surveillance camera in the magic workshop and looked at it. After Wuming left, Mayu and Shiro Amiya stayed in the house and did not go out. However, after a while, a girl came to the Amiya mansion. That girl was Sakura, who was treated by Wuming. Shiro Amiya might have known the girl named Sakura, so he brought her to his courtyard. After entering the courtyard, Sakura first cried and threw herself into Shiro Amiya's arms. Then Sakura took out an archer card. Senior, this is the strongest card, Archer Hero King Gilgamesh. Wuming noticed what Sakura said. Hero King Gilgamesh. Then, with the heroic spirit that Shiro Amiya transformed from his future, Wuming could speculate that the card was definitely not Gilgamesh's card. Sure enough, Wuming continued to watch. Assassin sneaked in through the process of Shiro Amiya bringing Sakura in. Assassin's appearance was quite strange, even disgusting. The grayish-white skull mask covered the chin and nose, and the mouth opened and closed along with the skull mask. The whites of the eyes were all black like the pupils, and the legs seemed to be fitted with artificial limbs. The inhuman legs were thin and long, making people feel disgusted. The left hand was a thin black arm, and the right hand was completely made up of tentacles. A large number of tentacles were constantly flying in the air. Seeing the enemy, Shiro Amiya quickly put Sakura behind him and projected a sword. Then, Shiro Amiya began to fight against Assassin. Although Shiro Amiya had improved considerably under Wuming's guidance, his opponent was still using a card that contained the power of a heroic spirit. Gradually, Shiro Amiya began to lose ground. Assassin, on the other hand, believed that Shiro Amiya was no longer a threat, so she knocked Shiro Amiya back with a heavy blow. Then, she gave up on dealing with Shiro Amiya and turned to deal with Sakura instead. Through the conversation between Assassin and Sakura, Wuming learned that Assassin had become mentally unstable. Julian ordered Assassin to be killed and brought back to Sakura. It seems that the power of the heroic spirit in the card will corrode the user, Wuming said calmly. The card user of Assassin seemed to be Sakura's brother, but he had died 5 years ago. Sakura had personally told Shiro Amiya this. Shiro Amiya, who was in a sorry state, got up from the ground. Sakura stood in front of Shiro Amiya. Senpai, let me protect you this time. Following Sakura's words, the card in her hand began to glow. Then under Assassin and Shiro Amiya's shocked gazes, the glow covered Sakura. Then the glow shattered and the card turned gray. Sakura looked at the card in her hand helplessly. Her voice trembled as she spoke. Why? Assassin's cruel and disgusting laughter responded to her. Ha 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 ha, my poor sister. Your card has been swapped by Lord Julian. Lord Julian guessed that you would betray him. Why would Lord Julian give you the real card of the Hero King, Gilgamesh? The card you have is only a fake. Assassin calmed down from her laughter and said to Sakura, now die. Following Assassin's death declaration, Sakura looked in Shiro Amiya's direction in despair. Senpai, goodbye. Assassin's tentacles condensed and reached for Sakura. Shiro Amiya struggled to get up. He quickly and awkwardly drew a few lines in the air. A few special runes appeared in the air. The moment the tentacle arm touched Sakura, Sakura's body trembled. Teleport! Shiro Amiya shouted. Sakura was teleported away in an instant. Assassin was stunned on the spot. What happened? I was going to kill Sakura. Where's Sakura? Where's Sakura? Where's Sakura? Looking at Assassin who had gone crazy, Shiro Amiya rolled and picked up the discarded card that Sakura dropped when she was teleported away. Wuming turned off the surveillance mirror. What happened next was needless to say. Chapter 110. Wuming walked to Meiyo's room, knocked on the door, then opened the door and walked in. Brother Wuming. Meiyu rushed over as if she was afraid and happy. Wuming hugged Meiyu and gently patted Meiyo's back. Did you listen to your brother Shiro's words? Wuming asked. Yes, other than when brother Shiro called me to eat, I always stayed in the room and read. Meiyu nodded her little head and pointed to the stacks of books on the desk in the room. Meiyo's room was not as luxurious as other girls' rooms, but it was very clean. Wuming once suggested to decorate Meiyo's room, but Meiyu refused. Meiyu, because of her childhood experience, had a big difference in thinking compared to other children. Meiyu only asked Wuming for the necessary furniture. In addition, Wuming also prepared a large bookshelf and desk for Meiyu. Wuming bought books for Meiyu in the past 5 years, all of which were placed on this large bookshelf. Through some magic tricks Wuming taught Meiyu, Meiyu made up for Meiyo's lack of height. After all, this large bookshelf was really big. Wuming looked at this room with some nostalgia. Then Wuming said to Meiyu, Meiyu, I want to send you somewhere else for a few days. No. Before Wuming finished, Meiyu interrupted him. Wuming looked at the little girl with tears in her eyes and stopped talking. Brother Wuming, are you starting to hate me? Meiyu said. How could that be? I'm just. Wuming said hurriedly. Then why are you chasing me away? Meiyu interrupted Wuming again. Wuming smiled helplessly. Then he squatted down and said to Meiyu, Meiyu, I want you to go somewhere else for a few days because I'm afraid I can't protect you. Do you understand? Wuming said this because he felt that the strongest Hero King card, Gilgamesh, that Sakura had told Shiro Amiya existed. After all, Assassin, Sakura's brother, had said that the strongest Hero King, Gilgamesh's card had long been swapped by Julian, which made Wuming even more certain that Gilgamesh's card existed. But, isn't Brother Wuming the strongest hero spirit? Meiyu asked. Because Meiyu had asked Wuming about his past, Wuming casually said that he could be considered one of the strongest hero spirits. After all, Wuming was not dead, and his original form was the origin dragon. The current hero spirit body was just a body made of magic power, by signing an equal contract with the suppression power. Strictly speaking, Wuming's origin dragon was of a higher level than hero spirits. Just like the gods and the ruler of gods, there was a strict hierarchy that could not be changed. After all, Wuming was the origin dragon that was born from the great origin of all worlds. In response to Meiyo's question, Wuming was a little helpless and said, That's true, but I'm not in my original form now. Besides, if the other party really has Gilgamesh's card, it's quite disadvantageous for me. Wuming was right. Apart from weapons that contained human principles that could pose a threat to Wuming, divine weapons could also cause harm to Wuming. Who told him to have a divine skill? Divinity B. Rumor has it that the first-generation direct descendant of Tiamat has top-notch divinity. Due to the inaccuracy of the rumors, it was downgraded to B. Because of Wuming's power and mystery, it ended up being a deity related to Tiamat. Although Wuming and Gilgamesh had a good relationship and should be very close, Wuming dared not confirm how the Gilgamesh of this world felt about him. After all, the king Gilgamesh taught by Wuming was a woman. The most important thing was that if it was really Gilgamesh, there must be countless treasures, that is, countless noble phantoms. After all, that was the privilege of the ancient king. Among them, there was no lack of noble phantoms. The most important thing was that Gilgamesh must have Enkidu. Wuming, who used Enkidu, knew how powerful Enkidu was. It was a real divine weapon. For enemies without divinity, Enkidu was just a particularly strong chain. But for enemies with divinity, as long as the target's divinity was higher, Enkidu's binding ability would be higher. And as long as it was an enemy with divinity, once entangled by Enkidu, it would be impossible to get rid of it. At the moment of entanglement, Enkidu would enhance the binding power according to the divinity in the target's body. That was not just the binding of the chain, but also the binding of power, speed, magic, mobility, and so on. And right now, the real heaven lock, Enkidu, was sleeping together with Wuming's main body in the origin of the shaped moon world. There were also Satya and Sebastian. Both of them were also sleeping inside the staff of Wuming. Wuming believed that when Wuming came out of the root, both of them would have unprecedented changes. Wuming looked at Mayu. After thinking again and again, he sighed. I really don't know what to do with you. Then Mayu smiled. Well, I like brother Wuming the most. Mayu hugged Wuming's neck with both hands and said happily. Although Mayu's voice was very low, the mood contained in it was quite loud. Well, since you are relieved, then let me go. What do you want to eat? I'll make it. Wuming patted Mayu's little head and said with a smile. Omelette rice. Mayu whispered. Wuming was taken aback for a moment. Then he was relieved. Can't I? Mayu looked at Wuming pitifully. Wuming didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It's not that you can't, but you eat omelette rice almost every day, aren't you tired of it? Mayu quickly shook her little head and said. How can that be? As long as it's brother Wuming's omelette rice, I won't be tired of it for the rest of my life. Wuming stood up, touched Mayu's little head and said. Then you go find your big brother Shiro and ask him to come over and help me. Tonight, we can have one more person in our house. Maybe we can make red bean rice. One more person? Red bean rice? Mayu, who was still young, couldn't understand the custom of red bean rice. In this regard, Wuming just smiled. It's nothing, just go find him. Remember to be polite when you face that sister. She might be your future sister-in-law. I know. Then Mayu went to find Shiro Amiya curiously. After all, Mayu was still interested in this sister-in-law's words. Then I'll start too delicious dinner. Then Wuming walked into the kitchen. In a moment, the aroma wafted out of the kitchen and surrounded the Amiya mansion for a long time. Chapter 111. When Shiro Amiya came to the kitchen, there were two beautiful figures, one big and one small, standing behind him. Since Sakura's injuries were no longer serious, Sakura wanted to cook dinner together. Mayu, on the other hand, came along because all three of them were in the kitchen. Thus, the four of them cooked dinner together. Naturally, a lot of lively things happened. First, Shiro Amiya introduced Sakura to Wuming. Sakura's full name was Sakura Madu. 5 years ago, she was from the Mitomo family, one of the 3 Yu families that had been completely wiped out. Due to the heavy casualties of the Inosaka family, Sakura was not killed and survived. The user of the assassin card was Sakura Madu's brother, Shinji Madu. His original body had been killed 5 years ago. Julian used the substitution magic to replace Shinji Madu's personality and soul with the body of a puppet, turning it into a puppet that obeyed orders. However, due to the incompatibility of the body and soul, coupled with the erosion of the power of the heroic spirit in the assassin card, Shinji Madu's personality had long been disrupted. He had become a mental patient who obeyed Julian's orders. When Wuming was treating Sakura Madu, he used magic to check Sakura Madu's body structure. He was sure that she had not been killed, but was living in the world as a person. He did not want her brother, Shinji Madu, to be played with after his death, causing his personality to be disrupted. In the end, he was freed by Shiro Amiya. That's right. In the end, Shinji Madu gave up resisting because he instantly regained his personality in the face of the threat of death. From there, he understood the cause and effect of the matter. In the end, he asked Shiro Amiya to take care of his sister, Sakura Madu. After that, he was freed by Shiro Amiya. Wuming held a skeptical attitude towards the claim that he was saved by another member of the Yu family. According to Wuming's knowledge, one of the 3 families of the Yu family, the Enosaka family, only had a 10-year-old girl left. If Sakura Madu was really helped by the Enosaka family, then the 2 girls would have to depend on each other for survival. Judging from Sakura Madu's expression, she seemed to have some conflict with the Enosaka family. However, that was a personal matter after all, and Wuming was not in a position to ask about it. Anyway, at the moment, Sakura Madu was not a threat to Wuming and the others. Not to mention that Sakura Madu was willing to risk her life for Shiro Amiya, to give the strongest Hero King Gilgamesh card to Shiro Amiya. At the moment, the Amiya mansion was Wuming's magic workshop. The power of a caster was that he could create his own territory. A powerful caster could even be called a god in his own territory. The reason why Shinji Madu could sneak in was because Wuming had left his magic workshop, and Shiro Amiya, who was temporarily in charge of the magic workshop, was still a half-baked magician. Wuming was shocked that I could teleport Sakura Madu away, when Assassin activated her noble phantasm. If it was done by Wuming, it would be very easy, and if Wuming was in the magic workshop, he could kill Assassin the moment she entered the Amiya mansion. Of course, that was if Wuming let Assassin in. If Wuming didn't want to, let alone Assassin, even Berserker wouldn't be able to come in. Of course, if it was those heroic spirits, it would be a different story, then accompanied by Wuming's ridicule. It seems to be the power of love. Shiro Amiya and Sakura Madu blushed like a monkey's butt. After the 4 of them had finished cooking dinner, they gathered at the dining table and had a delicious meal in their eyes. Sakura, you can stay here tonight, Wuming said to Sakura, who was cleaning up the dishes with Shiro Amiya. Hey. Sakura Madu and Shiro Amiya both made a strange sound. There's nothing strange about it. After all, Sakura has been ordered to be killed by Julian. If you let Sakura walk around casually, she may die. The 2 of them reacted, and then Shiro Amiya said, That's right, Sakura. It's very dangerous for you to go out casually. It's better for you to stay here. Sakura Madu blushed, then nodded. Then I'll stay here. Please take care of me, senpai, Oniai-sama, and sister Mayu. Sakura Madu's ambiguous words made Shiro Amiya a little uncomfortable, but Wuming smiled and nodded. Mayu didn't understand the meaning behind it, so she replied to Sakura Madu, Please take care of me, sister Sakura. Just like that, the 3 siblings in the Amiya mansion became 4. That night, Wuming directly used the magic workshop's ability to clear out a room for Sakura Madu to live in. Wuming didn't need a room at first, but after Amiya Kiritsugu passed away, Wuming added the identity of Amiya's distant relative and prepared a room for himself. After all, since he was going to stay for a long time, Wuming wasn't someone who didn't know how to enjoy life. So the 3 rooms were arranged in the order of Wuming, Mayu, and Shiro. Because Wuming and the other 2 rooms were next to each other, Sakura Madu's room was also next to each other. In this way, the rooms were arranged in the order of Wuming, Mayu, Shiro, and Sakura. At night, everyone else fell asleep, and Wuming stood alone in the courtyard. Wuming picked up the card in his hand, which depicted an assassin wearing a skull mask. Install Dream Summon. The card began to glow, turned into a stream of light, and instantly covered Wuming, and then the light dissipated. At this moment, Wuming was wearing a black tights. A cloak similar to a coat covered his whole body, and the cloak was constantly swaying with the cool night breeze. Wuming's face was wearing a slightly majestic and ferocious skull mask. Through the mask, Wuming looked at his right hand, which was no different from usual, but it was bandaged. Wuming learned the use of this card through Golden Green Kalas analysis. Is this one of Hassan Sabah? Wuming said. Kalas, analyze my current physical condition. After Wuming finished speaking, a pair of golden green dragon horns appeared in the air. Master, your body is possessed by a strange magical power. Your right hand has mutated, and an evil magical power covered it. Other than that, your physical condition is fine, and it has slightly improved. Although your body will not be affected, this evil magical power is harmful to your body, and it is recommended that you withdraw from the heroic spirit state immediately. Since Wu Ming said those words to Golden Green 5 years ago, although Golden Green still called Wu Ming master, its tone was no longer as stiff as before. Instead, it was full of emotion. In general, as long as it was harmful to Wu Ming, no matter how harmful it was, Golden Green Collis would always give advice. I know, Collis, I want to study this class card again. Please indulge me this time. Wu Ming said with a smile. You always say that. As expected, I'm just a magic costume. It's impossible for an owner to listen to the words of a magic costume. Golden Emerald Kelly was silent for a while before she said sadly. You too, every time it's a trick. Forget it, let's sleep first, and enjoy these last few days. It was obvious that this was not the first time this pair of master and servant had this conversation. Chapter 112. It's all Master's fault for not listening to my advice. I've always been thinking about you. Collis said in a cold voice. Wu Ming activated Fantasy Summon Install, and his body glowed. The light condensed in Wu Ming's palm and turned into a card. Wu Ming's body returned to its original appearance. Well, let's go to sleep. Collis, you should also go to bed early. Wu Ming said and began to walk toward the house. I know, Master. I will go to bed early. Collis followed Wu Ming, was silent for a while, and then said affirmatively. Wu Ming looked at Collis, who was floating in the air, and said, Don't try to play any tricks. Just like before, I will temporarily shut down all your analytical abilities. Collis shrugged helplessly and said, I will pay attention to my rest. Please rest assured, Master. However, Wu Ming still expressed helplessness for this human-like action as always. God knows what kind of hobby Zelik had. He actually set the magic costume to be able to move freely like a human. Can you imagine the scene of a pair of dragon horns constantly moving? It was really funny. Okay, let's go to sleep. Please don't interrupt my speech. It's very impolite, Master. I know. The master and servant walked into the house. The courtyard returned to its silent scene. The night slowly disappeared, and the day came. Wu Ming came to the courtyard early and took out the assassin class card. Install Fantasy Summon. Wu Ming changed into the appearance of wearing a skull mask, a black cloak, and a bandage on his right hand. After all, Collis was Wu Ming's noble phantasm. Wu Ming could freely control her. Therefore, Wu Ming put his noble phantasm Collis in a temporary state. In short, it was sleeping mode. Only then could he concentrate on studying the card. Wu Ming waved his hand, and a large amount of soil on the ground gathered, forming a few soil animals of different shapes. Wu Ming thought about the name of the relic and pointed his right hand at one of the mud animals. Zabania, delusional voice. The bandage on Wu Ming's right hand loosened, revealing a monster-like arm. Immediately after, his arm instantly extended and touched the soil animal that Wu Ming had locked onto. Then he instantly retracted his arm. At this moment, something appeared in Wu Ming's hand, a blood-red heart. However, this heart did not beat. Wu Ming crushed it, and the targeted soil animal began to disintegrate, as if the magic power was insufficient. Wu Ming instantly increased the output of magic power, and supplied it to the earth animal. Then the collapsing earth animal gradually recovered. After that, Wu Ming did the same thing to the other earth animals. Without exception, all of them collapsed first, and with the support of Wu Ming's magic power, they regained the appearance of the earth animal. Does it only have a pure lethality to inanimate objects, and such a weak lethality? Wu Ming put the bandage on his right hand back in place, and his right hand became like an ordinary person again. The power that Wu Ming was using at that moment was the power of Hassan Sabah, who had the hand of a demon god. The strange right hand just now was that demon god's arm. According to Wu Ming's experimental analysis, this relic simulated the opponent's life into a heart, which was the model of the opponent's heart. Although it was a model, it had the ability to curse. Moreover, this ability was only effective on living creatures with hearts. After all, for living creatures with hearts, the heart was their weakness. The main thing was that if the heart was gone, it was basically impossible to survive. Generally, for those without hearts, this relic could also simulate a heart, but its power would be greatly reduced, and it would become purely lethality. It seems like this ability is only effective against living creatures, Wu Ming said calmly. At that moment, Wu Ming wanted to try it on living creatures. He shook his head. After all, he could not leave his magic workshop too frequently. After that, Wu Ming began to test Hassan Sabah's skill. No, it should be a skill that all assassins had, aura concealment. The aura concealment skill that Wu Ming used by Hassan Sabah was a grade A. Basically, it could be said that no one would be able to find him. Of course, if there was a special relic, it would be different. Wu Ming thought to himself. His body gradually disappeared, as if the original person had suddenly disappeared. After a while, Shiro Amiya yawned and walked out of the room, starting the task of preparing breakfast. Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya each took care of the food for the day, changing it day by day. Shiro Amiya walked and walked, but suddenly he stopped. Why do I feel like something is approaching me? Shiro Amiya looked around cautiously, and said in disbelief. Suddenly, Shiro Amiya stood in the same place nervously, with a "don't blame me if you come any closer" posture. Wu Ming suddenly appeared behind Shiro Amiya. A dark knife was placed on Shiro Amiya's neck. Shiro Amiya was shocked. He did not realize that the guy behind him was approaching, and at that moment, a knife was placed on his neck. How is it, Shiro? You didn't expect this, right? Wu Ming said. Then, Wu Ming put down the knife in his hand. Shiro Amiya looked at Wu Ming in relief. I knew it. Let's not talk about whether there is an assassin card or not. Even if there is, I don't think anyone can sneak into your magic workshop. Wu Ming smiled, then threw a card with a woman with a bow and arrow on it to Shiro Amiya. You have to have the ability to protect yourself. If you encounter the same situation as before, do you think those people will kill you instantly or chat with you? Wu Ming teased. Shiro Amiya took the card that could transform into his future heroic spirit form, and nodded at Wu Ming. I got it, brother. Then Wu Ming asked, right, is Sakura still not up yet? I kind of missed the soup she made last night. Shiro Amiya said helplessly, brother, Sakura had a close shave with death yesterday. She chatted with me for half a day before going to sleep. She is still weak now, let's not disturb her. At that moment, Shiro Amiya's face was flushed. Oh, you're indeed my brother. You got her so quickly, Wu Ming said sarcastically. Wait. What do you mean by that? We were just chatting last night. Wu Ming did not listen to him. Instead, he walked to Meiyo's room. All right. Go and prepare dinner. Julian will definitely send people to attack us today. You have to be alert. He might have a heroic spirit card with a unique relic or skill. After that, Wu Ming walked into the house. Shiro Amiya was stunned when he heard that it was Julian. However, he soon reacted. Wei Gongshi clenched his fists, and his gaze became even more resolute. Chapter 113. After breakfast, Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya began to fight one-on-one. Sakura Madu and Meiyu stood on the side, watching the two. Install Dream Summon. As the incantation fell, Wei Gongshiro's heroic spirit transformed. Shiro Amiya instantly used projection magic to condense a pair of black and white dual swords and rushed toward Wu Ming. Ganjiangmoi husband and wife sword. Wu Ming observed Shiro Amiya's dual swords. Create green item, advanced item creation. As soon as his voice fell, a pair of ordinary knight swords appeared in each of Wu Ming's hands. Boom! The knight swords collided with Ganjiangmoi. The two of them kept waving the swords in their hands, and the impact of the swords hit the courtyard. Wu Ming and Shiro Amiya created a magical barrier around them to prevent the aftermath from affecting Meiyu and Sakura Madu. So powerful, Senpai and Oniai-sama. Sakura Madu covered her mouth and said in surprise. Meiyu had seen a lot of things, so she wasn't surprised. However, she still felt that it was unbelievable for her scholarly brother. Because in the beginning, 5 years ago, Shiro Amiya was killed by Wu Ming in one move. Now Shiro Amiya could fight with Wuming for dozens of rounds, which was quite good. Not bad, Shiro. Wuming said to Shiro Amiya while waving the swords and swords. Sure enough, even if I use the card, Oni-san is still as strong as ever. Shiro Amiya said. I'm going to work harder, Shiro. After that, Wuming's movement suddenly changed. The Night Sword seemed to be tied to a boulder, and each blow was mixed with heavy power, constantly bombarding Shiro Amiya. With each bombardment, Shiro Amiya's Ganjiang Moi would inevitably shatter, and then Shiro Amiya would use projection magic again in an instant to recondense the dual swords. Wei Gong Shiro kept retreating in the midst of the constant attacks and destruction, until… boom! What? Wuming shattered one of his night swords, and a large number of fragments flew in front of Shiro Amiya, blocking his sight. In Shiro Amiya's surprised eyes, Wuming held a sword with both hands and swung it down. Shiro Amiya flew out, rolled a few times on the ground, and stopped. Senpai. Sakura Madu saw Shiro Amiya fell to the ground, and quickly ran over to help Shiro Amiya up. Shiro Amiya deactivated his heroic spirit form, and was weakly supported by Sakura Madu. Oni-san, you're still so merciless. Shiro Amiya bitterly smiled. Wuming loosened the night sword in his hand that had reached the limit of its durability, and the night sword disappeared into spots of light, and then said, You just fought me as a servant. If I still suppress my power like before, then this battle would be meaningless to you. If Oni-san didn't train with me every day, I might even forget that Oni-san is a servant. Wuming walked to Shiro Amiya's side, and several Lune healing spells appeared, and Shiro Amiya's body emitted a green light. And I'm not a dead heroic spirit, maybe I'll come back to you one day after I leave. After Wuming finished speaking, the atmosphere fell into silence. Wuming also realized that he said something wrong, but it was a fact. After all, Wuming couldn't stay here forever. Sakura Madu also noticed that Shiro Amiya and Mayu were silent, and then she felt that she should change the topic. Actually, I have a question to ask Oni-sama. Oni-sama, you are a caster servant, right? Why is your melee ability so strong? That's because I'm a melee mage, Wuming said jokingly, and then looked at Shiro Amiya, hinting him to explain. Actually, Oni-san's real identity is Hyenryong, the one who taught Hero King. Shiro Amiya said. You're a Hyenryong. Sakura Madu exclaimed in surprise. Yes, it's really an ill-fated relationship. Gilgamesh's card is with Julian, right? I really want to see it, Wuming said with some nostalgia. After all, Wuming left Uruk for some time, and Wuming missed that Sundra girl. He didn't know whether Gilgamesh in this parallel world was a man or a woman. Oni-san, you just condensed magical power into your sword, right? Shiro Amiya asked. Yes, because I'm not dead. Even if I'm a caster servant, I don't have any magical skills, but I won't be directly affected, and I can still use magical power skillfully. Moreover, I'm a caster servant who is most familiar with magical skills, so attaching magical power to my sword is a piece of cake. Although that's what he said, generally speaking, a caster servant is basically not a warrior, so basically no warrior can be a caster. Of course, if someone can be like Wuming, then it's Wuming's archer, Sharon. If it's him, he can use magical power like Wuming. After all, Sharon is the teacher of the great heroes in Greek mythology, and he has the adaptability of all 7 classes. Well, you 3 go and rest, there are guests coming. After he finished speaking, Wei Gongshi and the others felt the ground tremble slightly. Then Wuming's hand crossed the air, and an oval mirror appeared. Through the far-end perspective mirror, Wuming and others can clearly see a small giant with a height of more than 2 meters, and a magician wearing a robe. One of them is walking on the ground, the other is flying in the sky, and they are moving in a certain direction. Of course, Wuming and others are very clear that they are moving toward the Amiya mansion. Are they Berserker and Caster? Shiro Amiya was surprised. After all, not to mention Caster flying in the sky, the seemingly irrational giant is even more terrifying. The giant's eyes were red, and he was breathing heavily. His hair was disheveled and messy. He was only wearing a combat uniform. His upper body was bare, and his muscles looked very powerful. His feet were bare, and he was holding a stone weapon that looked like both an axe and a sword. At first glance, it's not a good enemy. Only sending Berserker and Caster. Are you looking down on me? Wu-Ming said lightly. Collis, can you analyze the power of these two heroic spirits? Golden Green's dragon horn appeared on Wu-Ming's head, and then it made a sound. Through Berserker and Caster's clothes, I can judge that they are Greek characters, but I can't analyze everything with the current information. Is that so, Shiro? Take Mayu and Sakura back to their room. Wu-Ming ordered. I know, brother. Soon, Shiro Amiya sent Sakura Madu and Mayu back to their room. Then, Shiro Amiya used the card, entered the heroic spirit state, and came to Wu-Ming's side. At this moment, Berserker and Caster have arrived outside the Amiya mansion. Chapter 114. Berserker stood straight in front of the Amiya mansion, while Caster was flying in the air. The Ainsworth family is really useless, they can't even subdue a mere prop. Atlam Gariasta said disdainfully. As a member of a new family, Atlam said that as one of the supervisors of the three families, they couldn't even control the Great Holy Grail. To participate in the Holy Grail War, they actually came to take the Great Holy Grail. The Ainsworth family is really useless, no wonder they were exterminated. Atlam was wearing a mage robe, a hood on his head, holding a staff, floating beside Berserker and cursing. Hey, Mad Dog, I will open the enchantment of this magic workshop. You quickly go in and teach them a good lesson for me. Roar, roar, roar. Berserker made an unknown roar, but it seemed that this Berserker was very obedient to Atlam's words. Just when Atlam was about to cast Kanagi magic to open the magic workshop of Wu-Ming, the enchantment in front of the two automatically opened. Oh ho, you're quite tactful, aren't you? Saves me from wasting time. However, if you can consciously hand over the Great Holy Grail, that would be perfect. It would save me a lot of trouble, Atlam said arrogantly. Roar, 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 roar. Berserker roared furiously and rushed forward step by step. Wu-Ming instantly appeared in front of Berserker, which made Berserker, who still had a trace of sanity, stop. Atlam asked arrogantly, Are you the servant summoned by the Great Holy Grail? I didn't expect you to be a caster like me. You are really suitable to guard the Great Holy Grail. Because Saber, Lancer, and Archer were basically not weak in terms of magic power, Caster's damage to them was not considerable. Rider was in a better situation than Caster because of the bonus of his mount. Assassin, who was also known as the weakest class, didn't need to fight at all. And Berserker, needless to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. That was to say, Berserker's skill bonus made Berserker become a servant that was not weaker than upper 3 mounts. It can be said that except for Assassin, who was not good at frontal combat, Caster was the weakest class among all the classes. However, as far as Wu-Ming knew, Caster could be said to be the strongest at some point. So, who gave you the courage to challenge me, Julian? Wu-Ming smiled and said in a gentle tone. Oh, you're pretty arrogant, aren't you? So you're the teacher of the ancient king? Aria bragged so much about you, but you're just a magician from the divine generation. You were just born a few thousand years before me, humph. Just a servant, just a tool, I don't know what you are talking about. Now I also have the power of a god's magician, but before that, let me see how you deal with Berserker. I don't want to hide it from you, Berserker's real name is Hercules. Atlam seemed to be a bit too arrogant. He satirized Wu-Ming and finally exposed Berserker's real name. However, even if he looked down on servants, he didn't think that Caster, who dared to face Berserker and didn't panic, didn't have a trump card. To be on the safe side, Atlam let Berserker go first. Then Berserker, who still had a trace of consciousness, seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied with Atlam's exposure of his real name, but he still responded to Atlam and rushed toward Wu-Ming. The huge axe slashed toward Wu-Ming at a speed that was beyond the ordinary servants. In an instant, smoke filled the air. Atlam didn't expect Berserker to be able to kill Wu-Ming. After all, Caster, who could face Berserker without any defense, either had defensive means or teleportation ability. Sure enough, when the smoke dispersed, Wu-Ming disappeared, and the ground was still intact. Berserker's attack only raised a trace of dust. Even the ground that had been transformed into Wu Ming's magic workshop couldn't be broken. Teleportation. Atlam frowned. Just when Atlam was carefully looking for Wu Ming's position, Wu Ming's voice came into their ears. So that's how it is. Thank you for telling me the name of the most difficult berserker, caster. In an instant, a large number of silver chains broke through the air and madly wrapped around Berserker's body. Berserker could still struggle at first, but when the silver chains had tightly wrapped around Berserker, Berserker couldn't move anymore. At that moment, Berserker was like a mummy that was standing in an attacking posture. Except for the eyes, the rest of his body was wrapped by a large number of silver chains that appeared from the golden ripples in the air. Oh, do you think you can trap Hercules with just chains? You're too naive, Atlam shouted to the surroundings. Then he silently searched for Wu Ming's location. However, to Atlam's disappointment, not only he couldn't find Wu Ming's position, but even Berserker couldn't break free from those silver chains. What's going on? For not being able to find Wu Ming, Atlam was calm. After all, this was Caster's magic workshop. It was normal to not be able to find him, but it was abnormal that Berserker couldn't break free from the chains. After all, this was the card of the great hero of Greek mythology, Hercules, as the god of strength. How could he not break free from the chains? That's normal, Caster. This is Enkidu. Wu Ming's figure appeared beside Berserker, as if he was invisible before. Enkidu? How is that possible? Isn't that the hero king, Gilgamesh's noble phantasm? Atlam was a little panicked at the moment. After all, the reason why he came here to seize the great Holy Grail was because of his selfishness, and he didn't know why he could command the almost irrational Berserker Hercules card user. After all, the normal Hercules was already very powerful, and with the bonus of Berserk, his attributes could be regarded as the ceiling level. Moreover, Hercules also had a powerful noble phantasm called 12 Trials, God Hand. 12 Trials God Hand level, B-type, noble phantasm attack range. Maximum effect. 1 personate gave Hercules a body that could resist damage below B level, including B level. This noble phantasm also had the effect of automatically resurrecting the body after death, giving Hercules the ability to resurrect 11 times, and with enough magical power, the number of resurrections consumed could be recovered. It gave the effect of after receiving damage once, it will generate resistance to the same type of damage next time. It could be said that Berserker Hercules was an invincible hero spirit, but it had a fatal weakness. Divinity. Aes, the hybrid of Zeus and human, Hercules, who was welcomed as a god after death, had a high divinity skill. This skill became Hercules' biggest weakness. Chapter 115. How is that possible? That's the Enkidu we're talking about? Atlam exclaimed with his eyes wide open. Wu Ming didn't have Enkidu at the moment, and the real Enkidu was still in his root. But Wu Ming had a bug-like skill called Create Great Item. At this moment, those Enkidu that wrapped around Berserker were created by Wu Ming with this skill. Since then, Wu Ming has been promoted to caster, and through the connection with the Great Holy Grail, and through the inherent skill miracle, Wu Ming found that many of his skills have undergone a qualitative change. Take Create Great Item for example. The effect of this skill could be said that as long as the item created by Wu Ming was the same as the real item, the only drawback was the durability. If it was expressed in terms of attributes, then the item created by Wu Ming with Create Great Item would have an E durability. The way to maintain the durability was to constantly infuse the created item with magical power that was almost equivalent to an EX level noble phantasm every second. After all, it was a fake item that could be created out of thin air, and this only worked on Wu Ming. After all, no one had that much magical power. However, it was still bearable for Wu Ming, who had an unimaginable amount of magical power, just like the dozens of Enkidu that were binding Berserker at this moment. Even if those dozens of Enkidu were noble phantasm, if Wu Ming let them maintain their durability, it would take 3 months of continuous magical power infusion to deplete Wu Ming's magical power. And that was not counting the amount of magical power Wu Ming had to restore himself. All in all, You have lost, caster. Wu-Ming smiled and said to Atlam. Lost? Are you kidding me? Even without Berserker, I won't lose. Atlam's voice stopped abruptly, because at this moment, a red servant was standing beside him. Atlam's body was full of black and white swords, almost all over his body. Triple-linked crane wings altar. Atlam's body was pierced by thousands of swords, and Caster's card user fell to the ground. What? Time. Ho. Atram stuttered. Then Atlam's body changed and turned into an automaton. A card printed with a white beard wearing a hood holding a book in one hand, and a staff in the other hand was attached to it. So far, he didn't even make a move and his real name wasn't exposed, but he was killed by Miyashiro. Shiro Amiya picked up the card, walked to Wu-Ming's side, and handed it to Wu-Ming. Big brother, I keep having the feeling that this guy is bluffing. I feel that even without Big Brother's help, I can still kill him. Wei Gong Shirang said with confidence. Wu-Ming thought that was true. With Shiro Amiya's talent, even without Wu-Ming's 5 years of training, Shiro Amiya could defeat almost all servants with that inexplicable hero spirit Amiya card. After all, he could cast projection magic, which could restrain other hero spirits' equipment. Amiya's noble phantasm was mixed with it. Rather than calling it projection magic, it was more like a fake gate of Babylon. It seems that this guy is just a dabbler. He didn't even notice my buff. Wu-Ming smiled and shook his head. Shiro Amiya was a little helpless, and then said, Brother, you're too abnormal. You can even simulate the skill of an assassin. Wu-Ming looked up, then reached out and touched his dragon horn headdress, and the dragon horn glowed, and then said, This is Kala's credit. I don't have so much time to study that. Yes, the reason why Wu-Ming could use his magic workshop and magical interference to block Shiro Amiya's buff was all thanks to Golden Green Kalas. After Wu-Ming removed Kalas's noble phantasm, Kalas woke up. As soon as she woke up, Kalas ignored Wu-Ming. Even if Wu-Ming asked her something, she answered Wu-Ming in a cold tone. It wasn't until Wu-Ming used some comforting means and some special methods that Kalas returned to her original state, and helped Wu-Ming to analyze Assassin's skill. Master used very cruel means to make me surrender. I had no choice but to do this. Golden Green's dragon horn made a sound to defend itself. However, there was not the slightest grievance in its cold tone. It seemed to be mixed with a trace of happiness. Wei Gong Shiro, on the other hand, was not surprised. After all, his elder brother always appeared weak in front of his own magic dress, Miss Kelly. After all, Miss Kalas was also a very strict artificial elf. Shiro Amiya thought. Oh yeah, big brother. Shiro Amiya looked at Wu-Ming. How do we deal with this big guy? After that, Wu-Ming and Shiro Amiya looked at Berserker, who was tied up. Don't worry, Kalas has already helped me think of a solution. Wu-Ming smiled mysteriously. The remaining personality of the Berserker card user seemed to feel a chill. Berserker's body that had stopped struggling began to struggle again, accompanied by a miserable roar. Wu-Ming took out the nameless spellbook. Wu-Ming placed the spellbook flat on his hand, and the spellbook automatically turned pages quickly and stopped at one of the pages. Dreamland. Wu-Ming also drew several Lune runes in the air. As the Lune runes were drawn and the spell was recited, Hercules fell into silence. Dreamland was a 10th level emotional interference spell. It was originally a high-level spell used to restrict the enemy's movements. After being converted into reality, it became a spell that could make the enemy fall into an illusion created by the caster. In the illusion, the caster was God, everything. The victim would be controlled by the caster in the illusion, which would affect their physical body. However, the success rate of this spell was not high because the high-level players of Yggdrasil would equip some special defensive items, or use some special defensive skills at the beginning to defend against these invisible side attacks. A series of defensive items or skills such as anti-intelligence exploration, anti-control, control time reduction, illusion break, and so on. And because of Berserker's madness, although the card user still had a trace of sanity, the success rate was still too low. Wu-Ming used some Wait for Me blessing runes to increase the success rate of casting. It just so happened that Berserker had fallen into the illusion created by Wu-Ming. Chapter 116. Wu Ming dragged the user of Berserker into an illusion. After a while, Berserker's body, which was bound by chains, began to glow. Then Berserker began to shrink. Dozens of Enkidu also followed and tightly bound the shrunken figure. Just like that, a humanoid figure the size of an ordinary person who was tightly bound by Enkidu appeared in front of Wu Ming and Wei Gongshiro. A card with a picture of a crazy berserker fell to the ground. Wu Ming picked up the card and looked at the figure tied by Enkidu. With a wave of his hand, all the Enkidu disappeared. The figure fell to the ground as if it had reached its limit, and turned into an automaton. Wu Ming waved his hand, and the automaton disappeared. Sure enough, a mere automaton can't withstand the erosion of a rank card. Those automatons that were used by Julian could use rank cards because they had a human soul and personality. However, the rank card itself had the problem of eroding the user, not to mention Berserker was a servant with berserk skill. Therefore, after Berserker's card user deactivated his heroic spirit, he couldn't withstand the backlash of power and died automatically. After dinner, Wu Ming sat at his desk in his room. That desk was made by Wu Ming according to the desk in Nasarek. Wu Ming sat at the desk with several cards on it. There was the caster rank card printed with the old man, the assassin rank card printed with the killer, and the berserker rank card printed with the berserker rank card. As for the archer rank card, Wu Ming gave it to Shiro Amiya for long-term storage. In addition to Shiro Amiya's extra archer card, the opponent also has saber, lancer, archer and rider card with a mount. Wu Ming put away those cards one by one. Sure enough, these are just probing. The opponent didn't use any of the 3 strongest knight rank cards. Please call us. Wu Ming handed the 3 rank cards to Kalas, who was floating beside him. The 3 rank cards automatically floated beside the golden-green dragon horn headdress. Leave it to me, master. Kalas replied. Then Wu Ming stood up. Since the opponent doesn't want to take the initiative, let's take the initiative. What do you want to do? Kalas asked. Of course, I want to use my noble phantasm. Kalas calculated the time. Moreover, I'm now a servant. How can I not use my noble phantasm? As he spoke, the corner of Wu Ming's mouth raised into a smile. The next day, early in the morning before dawn, Wei Gongshirlang woke up early. This was a habit left behind by Wu Ming's training. As soon as he opened the door, Shiro Amiya's pupils shrank. This was because a large amount of strange magic power had filled the entire Wei Gong residence. Just when Shiro Amiya was wondering why he didn't feel it in the room, Wu Ming's voice came into his ears. Shiro, come to the backyard. Then Shiro Amiya sorted out his thoughts and went to the backyard. As soon as he entered the backyard, Shiro Amiya saw a lot of 3-meter-tall golems. Steel golems, plant golems, earth golems, elemental golems, and a large number of different types of golems. A large number of golems filled the huge courtyard of the Amiya mansion, almost filling the entire backyard. Moreover, there were still groups of golems coming out of the backyard's back door. Wu Ming, on the other hand, was standing on a 5-meter-tall magic puppet. Beside him was a strange magic staff that was constantly flashing with light. Beside the golem that Wu Ming was riding, a large purplish-black portal opened, and countless golems came out of it. Brother, this is? Shiro Amiya was puzzled. Wu Ming turned his head and looked at Shiro Amiya, who had just entered the backyard, and said with a smile, How is it? My relic. Shiro Amiya said excitedly, Is this your relic? Wu Ming smiled, then jumped down from the golem and looked at Shiro Amiya. That's the effect of my relic, the Staff of Anziergen. It can summon a large number of golems that I can control. As Wu Ming combined his relic, the Staff of Anziergen, with the magic workshop, the enchantment of the Staff of Anziergen resonated with Wu Ming's magic workshop. After all, they were enchantments, so it was understandable that they would merge. However, it took some time for the enchantment to merge with the magic workshop. When Wu Ming went to find the gemstone master, Wu Ming began to merge the two. Last night, Wu Ming found that the two were almost merged, and he could proceed to the next step. Wu Ming began to summon his army. The army in Nazarek's underground tomb was not to be underestimated. Because most of the troops in Nasarek were zombies, skeletons, vampires, slimes and other monsters, Wuming did not summon them. Instead, he summoned Graham from the fourth layer of the underground lake, which was called a golem in this world. After Wuming communicated with Yair Abed in Nasarek, Yair Abed said that he wanted to protect his holiness, and he had to come in person. However, Wuming refused because he could not meet the current conditions. Through Wuming's transformation, all the golems that Wuming summoned through the enchantment mutated. Originally, Nasarek only had ordinary golems and steel golems, but now Wuming summoned all kinds of golems. Not only did the level increase, but the quality of the golems also improved by leaps and bounds. For example, some special golems, such as the assassination golem, had a small body like a child, but it had the ability to transform. Although its defense was low, its attack power was very high. Just like Assassin, it was responsible for assassinating its master. Another example would be the 5-meter-tall special magic puppet that Wu Ming had ridden before. It was a special kind of magic puppet that specialized in defense. Its attack power and attack speed were quite low, but its defense was frighteningly high. Its body was specially made of tough soil that could automatically recover. Not only did it have super high magic resistance, but it also had a buffering effect on physical attacks. Even sharp blades could not pierce its body because the tough soil on the magic puppet would tightly clamp down on the sharp blades, expel them from the body and repair themselves. The number of special magic puppets that Silent Cry could summon was the second most. Most of them were ordinary golems that were used as cannon fodder. And because of the enchantment effect of Wuming's Staff of Anziergong, those golems only appeared as magical blocks. In other words, those ordinary golems were all projections of Nazarek's golems, and those new golems were purely created by Wuming's magical power. If an ordinary magician were to create those golems without the help of external forces, even if he was given a lifetime, he would not be able to create all of them. After that, Wuming stopped creating golems with the Staff of Anziergong and closed the portal. One by one, the golems walked out of the backyard until only Wuming and Shiro Amiya were left. Shiro, I will give Ryder to you. Is that okay? Wuming suddenly became serious. Shiro Amiya was stunned at first, then said firmly, no problem, leave it to me, big brother. Wuming smiled happily. You're tuning into the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.